June 19, 1944, 0809 hours, 130 miles west of Saipan. Commander James W. Blanchard grips the periscope handles aboard USS Albacore, SS-218, his knuckles white beneath the red battle lighting. Through the narrow lens, the Pacific spreads before him like molten glass, and then he sees it. A shape that makes every man in the control room hold his breath. "Carrier," he whispers, bearing 020, range 12,000 yards. But this isn't just any carrier. Through the distortion of heat and distance, Blanchard can make out the distinctive profile of Taiho, 33,000 tons of steel, Japan's newest and most heavily armored flat top. Vice Admiral Jisaburō Ozawa's flagship, the prize every American submarine commander dreams of. Albacore has been prowling these waters for 3 days, part of the submarine screen protecting the American invasion fleet at Saipan. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery, with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Intelligence suggested Japanese carriers were approaching, but seeing one through a periscope, especially this one, transforms possibility into heart-pounding reality. "Battle stations torpedo," Blanchard orders, his voice steady despite the electricity crackling through his nerves. Beneath the waves, Albacore banks hard to starboard, her diving planes angling to bring her into attack position. In the forward torpedo room, 6 Mark 14 torpedoes rest in their tubes, each one a 3,000-pound package of TNT and compressed air. The men have checked and rechecked the gyros, the depth settings, the firing mechanisms. Everything must be perfect. "Angle on the bow, port 15, calls the executive officer, sliding his parallel rulers across the plotting table. His calculations are frantic but precise. Speed, bearing, range, all factoring into the firing solution. Taiho is steaming at 27 knots, zigzagging in an evasion pattern, destroyers flanking her like gray sharks. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Blanchard knows he has one chance, maybe less. Japanese destroyers carry depth charges that can crush a submarine like a tin can at 300 feet. Taiho's own sonar operators are scanning the water, listening for the telltale cavitation of propellers, the ping of American active sonar. Range, 8,000 yards and closing, someone reports. Through the periscope, Blanchard watches Taiho grow larger. He can see aircraft spotted on her deck, Zeros and Judys ready to launch. On her bridge, Ozawa himself might be standing, unaware that 40 feet below the surface, an American submarine is lining up a shot that could change the course of the Pacific War. Solution ready, the executive officer confirms. Blanchard's thumb hovers over the firing trigger. 6 torpedoes, 45 knots, a spread pattern designed to compensate for any miscalculation in Taiho's course. Fire 1. The deck shudders as compressed air blasts the first torpedo from its tube. Fire 2, Fire 3. One by one, Albacore spits her deadly cargo into the sea. Fire 4, Fire 5, Fire 6. The last torpedo exits with a pneumatic hiss. Albacore lurches slightly, suddenly 9,000 pounds lighter. Blanchard counts the seconds in his head, each Mark 14 racing through the water at 46 knots, their contra-rotating propellers leaving barely a trace. All fish running hot, straight, and normal, reports the sonar man, his headphones pressed tight against his ears. He can hear them, 6 distinct pings growing fainter as they speed toward their target. Take her down, 200 feet, right full rudder. Albacore noses into the depths, her hull groaning as water pressure increases. Blanchard has no intention of staying around to watch. Japanese destroyers will converge on his position within minutes, their depth charges ready to turn the ocean into a killing field. But 4,000 yards away, someone else has spotted the danger. Warrant Officer Sakio Komatsu is circling Taiho in his Yokosuka D-4Y Judy dive bomber, completing his pre-launch checks when he sees them, 6 white trails cutting through the blue-green water like arrows. Torpedo wakes, heading directly for his flagship. For one frozen heartbeat, Komatsu calculates angles, speeds, impact points. Taiho's bridge hasn't seen them yet. The destroyers are too far out of position. There's no time for evasive maneuvers. 27,000 tons of carrier cannot pivot like a fighter plane. He pushes the stick forward. The Judy screams downward at 300 knots, her engine howling. Komatsu's wingmen watch in confusion as he dives not toward the enemy, but toward the water itself. His aircraft intersects the third torpedo track just 200 yards from Taiho's hull. The explosion is spectacular, a 70-foot geyser of white water and burning aviation fuel. The torpedo's warhead detonates on impact, vaporizing Komatsu and his aircraft instantly. A deep, steady narration, with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery, with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. 2 more torpedoes pass harmlessly ahead of Taiho's bow, confused by the turbulence. Another runs deep, passing beneath the keel. The 5th porpoises to the surface and circles erratically, its gyro damaged. But the 6th torpedo, the 6th, finds its mark. At 0810 hours, 3,000 pounds of Torpex explosive slams into Taiho's starboard side, just forward of the island superstructure. The blast tears through the carrier's anti-torpedo bulge, that honeycomb of compartments designed to absorb exactly this kind of impact. Steel buckles, rivets shear. Water floods into 2 boiler rooms and an elevator machinery space. On Taiho's bridge, Vice Admiral Ozawa grabs a stanchion as the deck shudders beneath him. Damage reports flood in, flooding in compartments A47 through A52, fires in the starboard passageways, steam pressure dropping in boilers 3 and 4. But Ozawa's damage control officer sounds almost optimistic. Flooding contained, Admiral. Counterflooding has stabilized the list.
We're still making 26 knots. Flight operations can continue. It seems manageable. One hit. Taiho was built to take worse. Her armored flight deck, her subdivided hull. Everything about her design says she can absorb punishment and keep fighting. What no one realizes, what no one can see, is that the explosion has ruptured aviation fuel tanks, and volatile gasoline vapors are beginning to seep into the ventilation system.
10:32 hours, 2 hours and 22 minutes after impact. Lieutenant Commander Takeo Yoshioka, Taiho's Chief Damage Control Officer, stands in the Central Control Station reviewing reports. The flooding is under control. The fires are out. Flight operations have resumed. Zeros are launching from the forward catapults, joining the massive air battle developing to the east. But something is wrong. Sailors are reporting headaches, dizziness. In the hangar deck, an aviation mechanic collapses while refueling a Zero. Another vomits into a waste bin. The smell is everywhere now. Sweet, cloying, the distinctive odor of aviation gasoline. Ventilation officer, Yoshioka barks into the intercom. Report on air circulation. The response chills him. When the torpedo struck, it damaged the carrier's ventilation trunking.
A well-meaning damage control team, trying to clear smoke from the initial fires, opened every ventilation duct, every air intake, every blower fan, flooding the ship with fresh air to disperse the smoke. But they've also created a circulation system that's pulling gasoline vapors from the ruptured fuel tanks and distributing them throughout Taiho's interior spaces. The entire ship is becoming a floating bomb, her ventilation system transformed into a delivery mechanism for explosive fumes. Shut down all ventilation immediately, Yoshioka orders. Seal the affected compartments. But it's too late. The vapors have already permeated engineering spaces, crew quarters, passageways, and the massive hangar deck where ammunition and aviation fuel are stored. Every spark, every hot surface, every electrical switch is now a potential trigger. On the bridge, Ozawa is focused on the air battle. His strike force of 430 aircraft is engaging American carriers. The largest carrier battle in history is unfolding. Radio reports flood in. Enemy fighters intercepted, bombs falling on American ships, his pilots scoring victories. He doesn't know that beneath his feet, Taiho is dying. 14:32 hours, 6 hours and 22 minutes after impact. In the hangar deck, Aviation Ordnanceman First Class Nobuo Takeuchi is moving 250-kilogram bombs toward a waiting Zero when he notices something. The gasoline smell has become overwhelming. His hands are trembling, not from fear, but from the narcotic effect of hydrocarbon vapors on his nervous system. He looks up at the overhead lights. They seem to shimmer, distorted by the waves of vapor-rich air rising from the deck. Every instinct screams danger, but the battle is still raging. The carrier must keep launching aircraft. The Emperor's war effort depends on it. Takeuchi secures the bomb to its trolley and gives the signal to move forward. Somewhere in Taiho's vast interior, Perhaps in the main telephone exchange. Perhaps in a ventilation motor. A relay switch closes. An electrical arc jumps across metal contacts, no bigger than a grain of rice, generating temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees. The concentration of gasoline vapor in the surrounding air has reached 1.4%, right in the middle of the explosive range. The spark finds the vapor, and Taiho explodes. The detonation begins in the forward elevator machinery space and propagates at 7,000 feet per second. The entire hangar deck, 600 feet long, 90 feet wide, becomes a single massive fireball. Bulkheads rupture. The armored flight deck, designed to resist 500-pound bombs, blows upward like a steel blanket, tearing loose from its supports. The forward elevator, weighing 30 tons, is hurled 300 feet into the air. 14:32 hours, the instant of detonation. Vice Admiral Ozawa is thrown across the bridge, slamming into the chart table. The entire superstructure whips sideways like a tree in a hurricane. Glass shatters. Equipment tears free from bulkheads. The roar is so overwhelming it transcends sound, becoming pressure, heat, a physical force that crushes the air from lungs. When Ozawa pulls himself upright, blood running from a gash above his eye, he sees his flagship dying. The flight deck has peeled open like a tin can. A Zero, fully fueled and armed, tumbles through the ruptured steel, cartwheeling into the ocean 800 yards away. Secondary explosions ripple through the hull, ammunition cooking off, aviation fuel tanks rupturing in sequence. Black smoke, thick as oil, boils upward in a column visible for 40 miles. "Damage report," Ozawa shouts. But the intercom system is dead. The telephone exchange, the nerve center of the ship, has been vaporized.
Runners sprint through smoke-filled passageways, carrying messages by hand. The reports are catastrophic. The hangar deck is gone, simply gone, transformed into a crematorium where 300 men died in the first 3 seconds. The forward third of the ship is ablaze. Fire mains have ruptured. The sprinkler systems, designed to flood burning spaces, pump uselessly into compartments that no longer have walls. Engineering reports the worst news. The explosion has cracked the main steam lines. Boiler pressure is dropping. Taiho's 4 turbines, which generate 160,000 horsepower, are losing power. Speed falls to 22 knots, then 18, then 14. Below decks, men are trapped. In the aviation fuel storage compartments, the temperature is approaching 800 degrees. Sailors pound on sealed hatches, their screams barely audible over the roar of flames. Damage control parties try to reach them, but the smoke is impenetrable, toxic, a mixture of burning gasoline, rubber, paint, and human flesh that sears lungs with every breath. Petty Officer Masaru Yamada leads a damage control team into the starboard passageway. They're wearing breathing apparatus, dragging fire hoses, determined to reach the trapped men. But the heat is like walking into a blast furnace. The deck plates are so hot they can see them glowing red through the smoke. "Back!" Yamada screams. "Everyone back!" They retreat just as a bulkhead fails. A wall of flame surges through the opening, consuming the space where they stood seconds before. 2 men don't make it, their bodies found later fused to the deck plating.
15:10 hours. Taiho is listing 11 degrees to starboard. Her speed has dropped to 6 knots. Destroyers circle like worried sheepdogs, their crews watching in horror as Japan's newest carrier transforms into a funeral pyre. Ozawa knows the truth now.
This isn't damage he can control. This isn't a fire he can fight. The fuel vapor explosion didn't just damage Taiho. It gutted her. Every major system is compromised. Her engineering spaces are flooding. Her magazines are at risk of secondary detonation. His chief of staff approaches, uniform torn, face blackened by smoke. "Admiral, we must transfer your flag. Taiho cannot be saved." For a moment, Ozawa doesn't respond. To abandon his flagship, to admit defeat before the battle is even finished, goes against every instinct, every principle of Bushido. But 1,700 men remain aboard, men who will die if he delays. "Signal destroyer Wakatsuki," he says quietly. "Prepare to receive flag transfer." 15:28 hours. Destroyer Wakatsuki pulls alongside Taiho's starboard quarter, her crew throwing lines across the narrowing gap. The carrier is settling by the bow now, her forward flight deck dipping toward the waves. Black smoke pours from every opening, creating a pall that blocks out the afternoon sun. Ozawa descends from the bridge, his staff officers following in a grim procession. They carry codebooks, operational orders, signal flags, the administrative apparatus of command. But they leave behind something irreplaceable: 1,700 men fighting for their lives in the smoke and flames below. Captain Tomeo Kikawa, Taiho's commanding officer, meets Ozawa at the transfer point. His face is a mask of ash and exhaustion, but his eyes burn with something fierce. Determination, maybe defiance. "Permission to remain aboard, Admiral," Kikawa says. "It's not really a request." Ozawa nods. He understands. A captain doesn't abandon his ship while men still live aboard her.
It's not tradition, it's duty, encoded so deeply it might as well be instinct. "Save as many as you can," Ozawa replies, then steps across to Wakatsuki's deck. The destroyer pulls away, her engines churning white water. From her fantail, Ozawa watches his flagship recede. He can see men moving on Taiho's flight deck, damage control parties, stretcher bearers, sailors helping wounded comrades toward the stern, where lifeboats are being lowered. But he can also see what they cannot: the way Taiho's hull is buckling amidships, stress fractures racing through steel as the weight of flooding water exceeds structural tolerances. The carrier is breaking apart from within. 16:12 hours. Kikawa stands on what remains of the bridge wing, coordinating the evacuation. The intercom is dead, so he's using runners, young sailors sprinting through smoke-filled passageways, carrying orders to abandon ship. But many compartments cannot be reached. In the lower engineering spaces, men are trapped by collapsed bulkheads and flooded passageways. Their banging on the hull plates can be heard topside, rhythmic, desperate, growing weaker. Chief Engineer Takashi Mori leads a team trying to cut through to them with acetylene torches. The metal glows white-hot, then red, then finally parts.
Water explodes through the opening with such force it knocks Mori backward. The compartment beyond is completely flooded, has been for the past hour. The banging they heard was coming from an air pocket. Was. Past tense. Mori sits on the deck, torch still in his hand, and weeps. 1645 hours. The last lifeboat pulls away from Taiho's stern. Approximately 1,400 men have been evacuated, packed into destroyers, lowered into boats, some simply jumping into the water and swimming to rescue vessels. But 300 remain aboard, dead in the initial explosion or trapped in sealed compartments. Kikawa walks the flight deck one final time. Bodies lie where they fell. Pilots who never made it to their aircraft. Sailors caught in secondary explosions. Men who simply couldn't outrun the flames. He stops beside a young aviation mechanic, no more than 19, still clutching a wrench. His uniform tunic bears the rising sun insignia. "Forgive me," Kikawa whispers. The destroyer Hamikaze pulls alongside, her captain shouting through a megaphone. "Captain Kikawa, you must abandon ship now. She's going down." Kikawa looks at the sea. It's stained with oil, littered with debris, life preservers, wooden planks, personal belongings. He thinks about staying, going down with his ship like tradition demands. But he's also the senior surviving officer with knowledge of what happened, how it happened. Knowledge that might save other ships, other men. He steps to the rail and jumps. 1708 hours. Hamikaze's crew hauls Captain Kikawa aboard, his uniform soaked, his face expressionless. He doesn't look back at Taiho, cannot bear to watch what comes next. The carrier is listing 23 degrees now, her bow completely submerged. The ocean is claiming her in increments. First the forward flight deck, then the island superstructure where Ozawa commanded just hours ago, then the massive smokestacks that once expelled the breath of 8 boilers. Aboard destroyer Akizuki, 600 yards off Taiho's port beam, seaman Hiroshi Tanaka watches through binoculars. He was supposed to transfer to Taiho next week, a promotion, a chance to serve on Japan's most modern carrier. Now he's watching her die, and he cannot look away. "She's rolling," someone beside him whispers. It's true. Taiho is no longer just sinking. She's beginning to capsize, the weight of flooded compartments pulling her starboard side under. The list accelerates. 30 degrees, 35 degrees, 40 degrees. Equipment slides across the angled flight deck and splashes into the sea. A Zero fighter, somehow still secured to the deck, tears loose and cartwheels into the water. 1728 hours. The mathematics of naval architecture become inevitable. When a capital ship lists beyond 45 degrees, the center of gravity shifts past the point of no return. Stability becomes instability. The ship wants to roll. Taiho passes 50 degrees. Inside her flooded hull, trapped air pockets are compressed by water pressure. The resulting explosions sound like depth charges, deep, reverberating thuds that shake the surface of the ocean. Each one sends new geysers of debris skyward: deck plates, life preservers, wooden furniture, oil drums. And bodies. Tanaka turns away when he sees them. Men who've been dead for hours, now expelled from the carrier's interior by the force of imploding compartments. They float face down in the oil slick, anonymous in death. 1732 hours. The end comes suddenly. A deep, steady narration with a calm but commanding tone. Slightly gravelly, mature voice that carries the weight of wartime history. Clear, deliberate pacing, never rushed, allowing tension to build naturally. Subtle emotional restraint, controlled intensity during dramatic moments, quieter and reflective during tragic ones. Cinematic, documentary-style delivery with precise emphasis on key names, dates, and actions. A voice that sounds authoritative, historical, and inevitable. Taiho rolls past 70 degrees, her flight deck now nearly vertical. For one impossible moment, she hangs there, suspended between sea and sky. 33,000 tons of steel defying gravity through sheer structural rigidity. Then her keel breaks. The sound carries for miles, a shriek of tortured metal as Taiho's spine snaps amidships. The two halves fold toward each other like a closing book. Her bow section, already submerged, acts as an anchor. Her stern section, still buoyant, rises into the air. Tanaka can see the massive bronze propellers still slowly turning, their 4 blades catching the afternoon light. He can see the rudder, frozen in its last course correction. He can see men who didn't make it off in time, tiny figures clinging to rails as the stern climbs higher, higher, until it's pointing almost straight up. Then, it slides beneath the waves. The suction is tremendous. A whirlpool forms where 33,000 tons of steel have just displaced an equal volume of water. Debris spirals inward, life rafts, wooden planks, oil drums, bodies. Akizuki's helmsman has to reverse engines hard to avoid being drawn toward the vortex. For 30 seconds, the ocean boils with escaping air. Bubbles the size of automobiles burst on the surface, each one releasing a breath of diesel fuel, aviation fuel, and smoke from fires still burning in sealed compartments as they descend toward the bottom. Then silence. Taiho is gone, resting now in 18,000 feet of water. Her bow and stern sections separated by 400 yards. Her crew of 300 dead, entombed within her steel hull. The time is 17:32 hours. Elapsed time since Albacore's torpedo hit, 9 hours and 22 minutes. 17:45 hours, 13 minutes after Taiho's loss. Vice Admiral Ozawa stands on Wakatsuki's bridge, watching the oil slicks spread across the water, the only grave marker his flagship will ever have. Around him, staff officers are silent, their faces carved from stone. They've lost more than a ship. They've lost the symbol of Japanese naval superiority, the vessel that was supposed to turn the tide of the Pacific War. But the battle is not over. Radio reports continue flooding in from the air engagement to the east. The numbers are catastrophic. Of the 430 aircraft Ozawa launched this morning, only 130 have returned. American fighters, Hellcats flying from carriers Essex, Lexington, and Enterprise, have slaughtered Japanese strike forces with an efficiency that defies belief. His air officer approaches with a message board. His hands shake as he passes it over. "Admiral, we've received reports from other task groups. Carrier Shikaku has been torpedoed by submarine Kavala. She's abandoned and sinking. Carrier Taihō reports severe damage from..." "How many carriers have we lost?" Ozawa interrupts.
his voice flat. The air officer swallows. 3 confirmed, sir. Taiho, Shokaku, and Hayo is still afloat but dead in the water. Additionally, we've lost over 600 aircraft and their crews. 600 aircraft, 3 carriers, in a single day. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, that's what American pilots are already calling it. But for Ozawa, it's something else. The death of Japanese naval aviation. The carrier force he commands has been gutted. The pilots, irreplaceable veterans with thousands of hours of training, are gone, shot down by American fighters, or lost when their carriers sank. 1830 hours, aboard USS Albacore, 50 miles southwest. Commander Blanchard surfaces his submarine as darkness falls. His crew is exhausted. They've spent the past 10 hours evading Japanese destroyers, enduring depth charge attacks that shook Albacore like a toy. But they survived. Radio room, send contact report to ComSubPac, Blanchard orders. 1 carrier hit, possibly sunk. Coordinates and details to follow. He doesn't know yet that his single torpedo, the 6th fish in a spread of 6, has led to the destruction of Japan's newest carrier. Doesn't know that Warrant Officer Komatsu's sacrifice intercepted 3 torpedoes but couldn't stop them all. Doesn't know about the fuel vapor, the explosion, the 9-hour death spiral that ended with Taiho on the ocean floor. He'll learn later. They all will. The sonarman climbs up to the bridge, breathing fresh air for the first time in hours. "Skipper, we actually hit something?" Blanchard allows himself a thin smile. "We hit something." June 20, 1944, 0600 hours, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief Pacific Fleet, reads the preliminary action reports from the Battle of the Philippine Sea. His intelligence officers are still compiling data, but the broad strokes are clear. Japanese losses: 3 fleet carriers, 2 light carriers damaged, 600-plus aircraft destroyed, approximately 3,000 aircrew killed. American losses: minor damage to 2 carriers, 29 aircraft, 76 aircrew. It's not a victory, it's an annihilation. The Japanese carrier force, Nimitz tells his chief of staff, has ceased to exist as an offensive weapon. He's right. Japan will build more carriers. Shinano, converted from a Yamato-class battleship hull, will be the largest carrier ever built. But without trained pilots, without experienced aircrews, carriers are just floating steel boxes. The air groups that died at Philippine Sea cannot be replaced. Training a carrier pilot takes 2 years. 2 years Japan doesn't have. The Americans, meanwhile, are producing pilots at an industrial scale, their training programs churning out competent aviators in 6 months.